I'll mute myself.
It's all good. What's happening, y'all? Y'all know who it is. It's Elijah Best. I'm the CEO and founder of Vet Boss, as you see down there in the little corner of the screen. And I'm also known as Vet Boss. Let's go, as Mike just said about a second ago before we went live. Mike, where you at, man? Tell us where you at, man.
Yeah, I'm out here in Eva Beach, Hawaii, just enjoying the sun.
This man is chilling in Hawaii. And I got to ask, what is that thing floating behind you there? Is that an animal?
Yeah, jellyfish.
That's dope. In Hawaii with jellyfish. All right, y'all. So what are we talking about today? Mike is a top 1%. It's very hard to do of a podcaster. He's a host of a top 1% podcast, and it's called the Average Joe Finances Podcast. And yeah, man, I'm here to milk him for everything he's got so he can share it with the fellow veterans. He's a Navy veteran himself. So it's really cool to just, have veterans getting together with veterans and sharing information and insight to other veterans. And he's actually out there crushing it and killing it. So I thought he'd be a perfect victim for me to bring on the show today. So I'm very excited to hang out with him and share this knowledge with you guys. Mike, I want to do you a blessing. We got people saying, what's up? What is up, family? You're probably someone who's very close to us, and I want to know who you are. So if you guys can log into the StreamYard chat room so I can say your name. And then also, Elijah's not the best guy. I mean, my last name is Best. Someone probably would have made that, so I had to do it first. I'm not the best in the world at asking the questions. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to make a comment so we can share this. And if you know any other veterans who can learn from growing their podcast, or maybe they already have a podcast, share this video with them. And what's the link for the chat room? We'll get that to you in like 10 seconds, because Mike, I want to invite you to use the link and put it on your profile if you would like to, because then people can start seeing this interview too.
Sure thing.
So while I'm doing that, my friend who also said, what's the link for the chat room? I will post that somewhere. I'm going to do my best to post it somewhere. Let me know. Are you on my personal page? Are you in the Vet Boss Facebook group? Let me know so I could put it in the comments, the link for the chat room. But if you hit see more, actually, let me share my screen here. All right. We're going to do some Inception stuff. You guys are going to understand what I mean by that in a second. All right. See? Inception. All right. If you guys see here where it says see more, oh, it doesn't have the link in here. Normally it has the link for you to join StreamYard and make a comment below here. I don't know why it doesn't. And I don't know what to do about that. But what I will do is I will give Mike that link now, and I'll stop sharing my screen. So Mike, here you go. I'm going to put it on my personal Facebook page and the Vet Boss page. Those would be the two where I'll put the link. Actually, Mike, I'm going to message you the link.
Okay. Cool.
So I just sent you the message of the link. And while you're doing that, we're going to start here in about 30 seconds, guys. Probably like 1 minute. While we're doing that, I'm going to see if I can find the link for you guys to join the chat room and make comments. Probably not. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. Vet Boss group. Okay. Can't post comments at some destinations. Oh, okay. Go to StreamYard.com/Facebook. I'm going to post it in the Facebook group. Oh, what's up, Jimmy? I can see your name, though, because I went to the Facebook group. There you go. I just posted it in the comments. Oh, I could comment it right there, too. That's dope. All right. So, yeah, it's posted in the comment. And I'm located in Colorado. That's where I'm at. Cool. All right, Mike, you ready? Are you?
Kinda, yeah. I'm trying to share this live stream.
Got you.
Let me see here. Yeah, I'm in the group, but it's not shareable.
You're in the group, but it's not shareable. Oh, okay. You got to go to my.
And then the StreamYard link that I have, like it'll just bring somebody to the studio. It looks like, because when I clicked it, that's what it did. It brought me back into the studio. I thought it was going to kick me out.
Okay, I got you, bro. I got to give you this one. One sec. I went to my personal page and I just messaged you this one. Bam. We should be good now.
Okay. Yeah, there we go.
Mike is in Hawaii. Isn't that awesome? And he said he's in a place called Ewa. Is it Ewa or Eva Beach?
Eva. The W is pronounced like a V.
Oh, that's what's up.
All right,
Cool.
cool.
Well,
So I'm posting
Jimmy,
this.
I don't know where it brought you to, but the mission was to see your name, and mission was successful. And guys, we're gonna be starting here in about 45 seconds, any minute now. Your first duty assignment. What? Where? Colorado Springs or Eva Beach? Let us know in the comments. Guys, like I said, we're about to drop some heat. This guy is literally the number one top percentage host, however you say that sentence, of a podcast. So he's going to have a lot of nuggets for you guys. Kunia, is that in Hawaii, Mike?
Yep, sure is.
That's what's up.
Right up the road from me.
Okay, that's dope. All right, you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. I love it. All right, brother. So probably the first place that people are going to want to start is like, okay, should you start a podcast? Yes or no? And who would benefit from having a podcast? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, absolutely not. No, I'm kidding. So it just depends on what it is, what your goals are, what you're trying to do right now. If you have a business and you're trying to expand on it, or you have a network that you're trying to build, a podcast can be a very lucrative thing to help you grow both of those. As a matter of fact, I spoke at the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference back in March, and I was talking about networking as a real estate investor and why it's important. And then the other part of that conversation was I brought up the importance of podcasting as a real estate investor and also to build your network, right? So it doesn't have to be like this crazy production level podcast, right? You can do it with something as simple as your phone, and using Anchor, which is a free app or website that you can use to host your podcast and just put your ideas out there, right? If you sit here and you think about, well, I only got, a couple people listening to my podcast. Like, when I first started off, I think my first 6 months, I was getting like 20 downloads an episode. So I was like, oh man, I got like just 20 people listening to my show. So what's this really doing? Am I really helping anybody out? And then I thought about it for a second. I'm like, sitting down in a classroom and, as a teacher or an instructor or anything like that, and you have 20 people in front of you, that's a lot of people that you're sitting there talking to. So if you sit there and look at it from that perspective, and you realize that you're impacting those 20 people in front of you right then and there, and again, this doesn't have to be some type of crazy high quality thing, right? Now, I can get into all the nitty gritty about how I use my podcast to grow. And I think we'll get into all that, but I just want to talk about like when you start a podcast, how you don't really need to go overboard, right? So I already mentioned like free platforms like Anchor, right, is a place where you can host your podcast for free. But also when it comes to like working on your stuff and working on your podcast to clean it up, make it sound a little bit better, there's free apps out there that can help you with that, like Audacity and DaVinci Resolve, which I use for my videos. And little things like that when I first started off was kind of like a lifesaver for me, because I didn't want to just record, my stuff, because I'm a big like pauser, and you'll see I'm even doing it right now while we're talking. I say a lot. I'll say, a lot and things like that. So I try to clean that stuff up when I can. But when you go through it, you really don't need to, because as long as you're getting your message out there to your audience, that's all that matters. So if you want to start a podcast, understand why you're starting a podcast. That's the biggest thing. You have to have a why. And the other thing you have to have is a focused down niche that you're going to concentrate on. You don't want to just be like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast and just talk about whatever. I mean, some people do that, and that's fine. It's your choice. But if you're looking to take your podcast and turn it into a business, you really need to niche it down into specific topics. So I know that's a lot for the first thing. But
that was great. That was great. So what you've actually done is you turned your podcast into the business. Now, a lot of times when I think about it for using it to promote the business, but you've actually monetized your podcast. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. So I did monetize my podcast, and it took a while to get there, right? Like I said, my first 6 months was pretty dismal. I wasn't getting that many downloads, and I found myself in a spot where I was doing so much work for what I felt like was no return, right? And even now, even with my podcast being monetized and me making money, it still feels that way because the amount of time that I put into it, right? But at the same time, it's like, it's a passion project for me, for one, because it all started off as a blog. Like I started this as a blog to share what I was doing in my own journey to personal financial freedom, right? And a friend of mine actually twisted my arm and said, "Hey, you should do a podcast because I know you like to talk and I know you like to talk to people. Why don't you just do a podcast?" I'm like, maybe when I retire from the Navy. But a little arm twisting. I said, okay, fine. I'm down. Let's do it. I was like, if I'm going to do it, I want to do at least one episode a week. So that's what I did. And as the show grew, different opportunities come forward, right? So if we're going to talk about monetizing the podcast, like what I did to monetize mine to start off was affiliate links, right? So I would, a book that I thought was good, and relatable to my podcast, for example, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I would go get the Amazon affiliate link and I would post that on my show notes, right? So that was one way to make money. The other way was affiliating with a company. So when I was working on getting my real estate license, I used this program for myself to help me study for the real estate exam. And it was called Prep Agent. And I said, hey, you know what? This is something that I can probably share with other people. So I reached out to them and said, hey, do you guys have an affiliation program or anything like that where I can, share this and provide a coupon or something like that to help other people out, and then also make a little money for myself too. I was like, this is pretty cool. And they're like, yeah, we could set you up. And that was my first affiliate link that I set up, which was pretty cool. Then I got involved with this other network called Wealth Tender, where they are strictly like financial coaches, financial advisors, personal finance blogs, and finance podcasts and real estate podcasts and things like that. Right. And, I jumped in on that, like when it first started, when it first came out, and I affiliated with them as well. So I have an affiliate link with them. And then I've also recently had a couple sponsorships that come through. So if you go on my podcast site, you'll see who we're sponsored by, and all of that. So, but it took a little while to get there. This wasn't just like I started the podcast and boom, I'm making money from it. No, it was like a year before I got my first like check. And there's a couple different ways you can do it too. You can do Patreon, you could do Buy Me a Coffee, which I've done that too, and people have sent money in through that as well, just to support the show, which is great because the way that I have my stuff set up, it's not cheap. You can see this is not a cheap mic. I don't have a cheap setup. I have been slowly growing what I've got and just making it better. But I also have several websites that I host on and everything like that. So I pay money to make it a better production. So with that, that's why that was the whole purpose of I wanted it to be self-sufficient. But now it's self-sufficient and then some a little bit, right? But excuse me, just got to clear my throat. Okay. So so that's some of the ways you could do it is affiliations, get sponsorships. Once you grow your show to a certain I guess rating, or you're getting a certain amount of downloads, per month. Like I'm at the point right now where I get between 10 and 15,000 downloads a month. I broke 100,000 downloads. It took me 2 years to get there though, right? Like I said, like my first year I had 20,000 downloads. And here I am, actually this July will be 2 full years since I've been podcasting, and I'm sitting at about 120,000 downloads now. So in my second year, I'm hitting just 100,000 downloads in that second year. So year 3, I can't imagine, it's going to be even higher than that. And it's just been, because I've been consistent and I stayed on top of it and I keep releasing my episodes every week. I send out my newsletters. I mean, there's so much more that goes into it. So I don't know how far down the rabbit hole you want to go, but I'm prepared to talk to it all. So whatever, if there's somebody in the chat that wants to hear something specific, I'm happy to share that with you. Let me have it.
Wow, man. So, I got to ask. So a download is not like Spotify where people are streaming it, right? They're just listening to it. Downloads are actually people that are downloading it onto their phone and then listening to it later type of thing.
Yeah. So it depends, right? So a download would be that, right? Where somebody downloads it onto their phone to listen to it later. But I think, the way it counts it, I think it counts downloads also as streams. So like if somebody listened to it on Spotify or on Pandora, because I'm everywhere, man. I'm on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify. I mean, Average Joe Finances, if you Google it, you're going to find it on every podcast platform out there.
That's awesome.
So if somebody streams it, that I think that counts as a download. But I try to focus on the numbers that I use with my podcast host Buzzsprout, because they're IAB certified. Yeah. I've had other things show me that I was making like 20,000 plus downloads a month, but I'm like, how much of that is real? How much of that is bots? Things like that, because there's a lot of stuff out there that kind of inflates numbers. So I tend to stick with what my podcast host shows me because they are IAB certified. They verify that the downloads came from a human.
That's awesome. And what equipment, if someone was starting out, they had a low budget and they wanted to do enough that was necessary, but not too much to break the bank, what would you tell them to start out with?
There's a couple ways you can start. I knew somebody that started a podcast with their AirPods and an iPhone, and they did it all through Anchor. And I'll tell you, the quality that you get out of the Apple headphones or the AirPods is actually some pretty decent audio quality. So that's one way to start. But that if you don't have an iPhone or something like that, and you're looking to not buy a smartphone to start up, because there are still some people out there that, I mean, not many, but that don't use smartphones, right? But there's ways you can do it. You can do it online you can go register on anchor.com, create an account there. That was the first one that I ever used before I switched to Buzzsprout. And I used it because it was free, which is my favorite price. And the other thing that I like in that is it had all the tools I needed for, adding little sound clips, or if I wanted to cut some audio out and edit it in-house, I could do it there. It wasn't the best, but it was something and it was free. Right. So you could get that, and you can use a USB mic. Like I would try to get, a quality USB mic, spend probably close to $100. But if you do, you spend about $100, get the mic, get your little setup, use your laptop or use your phone and some headphones. And I think it'll start you off in a pretty good spot. Now, that's if you want to do solo episodes. If you want to do interviews and things like that, you have to start looking at different ways to do interviews. There are free ways out there. There are free ways to do these interviews, and then download the actual recording and then upload it. If you want to edit it in programs like I mentioned earlier, like Audacity, that's 100% free, and you can go in there and clean up your audio and make it sound nice. There's another app out there called Descript, which I've used and I still kind of use. You got to pay for it if you want to get like more time. So I think I get like 10 hours a month on it.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, because the thing is, like, I have a quality setup, right? So I have good audio, I don't get feedback on my mic and things like that. And I can adjust the levels as needed, but my guests don't always have the highest quality equipment. So one of the things I get to use in Descript is they have this thing called Studio Sound or something like that, where you can actually clean up the other audio and make it like if there was background noise or anything like that, it could pull all that stuff out. But at the same time, I also have an editing team that does that stuff for me now anyway, because now I outsource that. And we can get into that if you want to. But I started outsourcing a lot of my stuff that I was doing because it was taking up too much of my time, and still being active duty in the Navy while running the podcast, while also being a real estate agent and also being a financial coach. It started to take a lot out of me. And I realized I wasn't spending that quality time with my family that they needed. So I had to start to scale back somewhere. And the podcast was the first place I decided to kind of scale back from, because it at the time wasn't making me like really any money. So I was like, if I could pay a little bit of money and pay someone else to do the editing for me, I can kind of just back off a bit. So that was my big reason for outsourcing the editing. So, but yeah, whichever way you guys want to go,
Yeah.
I'm down.
Dope job. I can see why you have a very successful podcast, very well spoken. So I'm going to ask, because I'm sure someone's thinking about it. I would like you to say when it's too early to hire VAs, which are virtual assistants, guys that are working in other countries. And when is it too late to hire a VA?
Well, I don't think it's ever too late. If you get to a point where you feel like it's too late, don't sell yourself short. And I don't think it's ever too early. So, a lot of people have come to me, because I also have a podcast editing service, right? The same team that I outsourced to, I fully onboarded them, and we help other podcasters now, right? And I've had people ask me like, hey, Mike, I'd love to use your services. I just don't want to spend this money on it right now. So what are some other good resources? And I'll tell them, hey, go use this, go use that, but you're going to be doing it yourself. So if you're trying to get the time back, recommend you outsource. So for me, I outsourced before my podcast was making money. And I did that because I was thinking about what was more valuable to me. The couple $100 a month that I'm spending to pay these guys to edit my podcast, or the time that I'm getting back from not having to do that anymore. So to me, I weighed out the pros and the cons of my options. And I said, it is worth me paying for this service. It works out better that way. And now I've got the time to do these other things and be with my family and focus on my other side businesses that I have going on as well. So it just depends on where you're at in your journey. If you can afford it, definitely go for it. Outsource whenever you can. If you can't afford it, then definitely don't do it. Because I'll tell you that, especially as a financial coach as well, don't pay for something that you can't afford. That 100%, that's straight up right away. But if you're looking to turn your podcast and grow it into a business, and you know that you're going to scale it and make money from it, you need to look at the outsourcing, like hiring a VA or hiring an editing team or anything like that, as an investment, right? This is you putting money into your future business. But if you treat your podcast as a business and you come up with a business plan and you figure out how you want to run it, you know, then it will run like a business. But if you don't treat your podcast like a business, it's just you talking into a mic or interviewing somebody, and that's all that it is. So it just depends on where you're at mentally and how you want to scale and grow your show and how you want to use it. Because you can use a podcast to grow your business, like if you have a separate side business, or you could use your podcast to grow your network, as I mentioned earlier. So it just depends on what you want to do. Or you can do both, which is what I'm doing. I'm growing it as business and I'm using it to grow my network. So
that's dope. When you say that you could treat your podcast as a business, what does that mean to you?
Well, exactly how it sounds, right? So I treat my podcast as a business. The way I look at it is, I look at the money's coming in and the money's going out, right? So I'm looking at, the costs for certain things. Of course, the outsourcing, besides just my editing, I also outsource a lot of my social media management to a VA as well, and they handle all of that. And as the podcast makes a little bit more money, I spend a little bit more to have them do a little bit more things, right? So I spend a little more on the VAs to have them do more, post in more places, and do more things for me in the background that I can kind of step back and walk away from. Because ultimately, the way I'm looking at it is I just want to record my content and then pass it off and have it be more passive, right? Yeah. The only active thing I want to be doing is recording the content and giving it to someone else for them to do what they do, right? So that's kind of the way I've been building it up, and that's the way I treat it as a business. I'm trying to turn it more into a passive business. But you can be as active in it as you want. I know some people that do their own podcasts and they swear by editing it themselves and doing everything themselves, and they put all the time into it and they're making money from it and they're happy with doing that. And that's their full-time job. So, but for me, this is not a full-time thing. So I need that help. I need that, assistance from the VAs and from the editing team to help me push this further and scale, because I'm doing other things as well. So I kind of have like this, I'm all over the place type deal. But when I focus down on something, I focus down on it hard. And a lot of times it's hard to just kind of rip me out of it. So as I've been outsourcing and kind of like stepping back, that's been like the hardest thing for me is giving up the power for certain things. Right. So I still personally will put my podcast, I will be the one that clicks the button to put it live. I will be the one that uploads the YouTube video to make it live, even though I have people that have access to all those accounts that can do it for me. I just like to look at it one more time, make sure it's good, give it that QA before it goes out. So that's just me. I'm still working on that. I still got to build that trust with someone. And then I'll probably be able to pass that off as well. But that's kind of where I'm at. And that's how I treat it as a business.
No, that's awesome. I guess if you could sit somebody down, right? Let's say you have a little brother.
I do. I have 2 little brothers.
Okay. Let's say one of them came up to you and they're like, Mike, I want to start a podcast. I got to go in 5 minutes, but what do I do? How do I do this thing and be successful? What would you say to them?
I would say, there's plenty of free information out there, right? You don't need to go and pay somebody to teach you how to do this. There are people out there that coach it. I've coached other podcasters, right? But, first I'm going to tell you, what is it that you're doing the podcast for? What is your why? That's the question that you need to answer as a person that wants to start the podcast. Once you tell me what your why is, okay, so you're my little brother, right? So why do you want to start a podcast, little bro?
Okay.
I'm asking you. Hey, you said you were my little brother. So, all right.
No, I said,
so why do you want to start a podcast?
Brother, came up to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say my little brother says, "Hey,
Yeah.
okay, I want to start a podcast, and I want to start it because like I've been seeing what you're doing, older bro, and investing in real estate, and you're growing this massive network of people, and I just want to have that same network." And I'll say, "Okay, bro, then this is what you need to do if you're going to start a podcast to grow a network. You're going to get everything set up. You're going to at least download Anchor on your phone, get your headphones, or go buy the mic and set it up on your laptop. Go create the account, go get your artwork made, and have all of that stuff preset and ready. Then you're going to go record a trailer for one, and then you're going to record your intro episode where you're introducing yourself, who you are, why you're doing the podcast, and what type of information your podcast is going to be putting out. Now, if you're starting a podcast like I did to meet other real estate investors and things like that, that's what you're going to talk about in your intro. Okay. Now, after that, you're going to go and start reaching out to people and saying, "Hey, go to the different real estate groups and say, 'Hey, I just started this podcast. I'm looking for guests, people that are doing A, B, C, or D.'" And trust me, people will message you because people want to put their information out there. They want to share their story because it's free publicity for them, right? That's the one thing you got to remember when you're bringing somebody on their show. You're giving them free publicity. Okay. So you go and you put yourself out there. You have to put yourself out there. If you're an introvert, this is going to be the hardest thing for you. Okay. But you have to go and put yourself out there. Once you start getting some of these responses, okay, you're going to start setting up these interviews. It could be over Zoom. It could be whatever, over the phone, as long as you have a means to record it. That's fine. Whatever you want to do. I prefer to do it where I can record the video as well, because I like to upload to YouTube as well. Just depends on what you want to do. But from there, I would say record at least, at a minimum, 5 episodes before you launch your podcast. Okay. Have at least 5. I tell some people you might want to have 10. Just depends on how often you're going to release episodes. For me, I do weekly. The way I look at it is if I have 5 episodes recorded, I have 5 weeks of content. If something comes up and, or I want to go on vacation with my family, I've got the next however many weeks done. So me personally right now, I have, I think, 25 episodes right now in queue. And I'm actually getting ready to, in July, start dropping 2 episodes a week to try to catch up, because I'm tired of telling people when I interview them, "Yeah, your episode will be out in 6 months, man. Sorry." Okay. But it gets to that point where you've just got so much. And it also gets to a point where you got to tell people, "Hey, look, you're not a good fit for the show. And I don't think it's going to work." Right. There's been interviews that I've done that I've actually had to throw away because it was crap. Right. So things like that happen. But anyway, moving on back to my little bro here. Right. So get those 5 episodes recorded. Okay. And after that, then you're going to launch. But when you go to launch, you want to make it a big deal. You want to be on social media. You want to say, because as you're recording these episodes too, you're going to start talking about it. You're like, "Hey man, I'm starting a podcast. I've already interviewed, so many awesome people in the real estate industry, and this is what we're going to talk about, blah, 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 blah." And you start pulling some clips out of that and sharing like maybe little trailers or little clips of your interviews, right? For 30 days, for a month. I just say, just do a month. Share all that stuff all over social media. Hype it up. Okay. I helped my buddy do this when he launched his podcast, and it took off like a bat out of hell. It was crazy. Right. And when I saw him do this, I said, "This is the ticket right here. This is how you start at a much more successful listen ratio than what I did, where I started a podcast and said, 'Hey guys, I just started a podcast. It's live now. Go listen to it.'" Right. You hype it up. You get people motivated. You get people wanting to listen to it. You start showing these little teaser clips and you're like, "Oh man, hey, I know that guy is a real estate investor. That's pretty cool. And I want to connect with this guy. I want to connect with the little bro here and figure out what's going on. I want to go on his show." Right. And you start getting people to talk about it and hype it up. Right. Then comes launch day, where you release it. You can do a giveaway. But again, if you're not trying to start with, spending money, you don't do a giveaway or anything like that. But there's little things that you could do, right? So a giveaway is one, right? So you do a giveaway, you start collecting people's email addresses, you start building up newsletters, right? And you start sending out these weekly newsletters or monthly, however often you want to do it. I do weekly, where every week I send out, "Hey, here's the episode that just came out. Here's a little bit about it. Here's some other things that we have going on with Average Joe Finances, blah, 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 blah. Hey, here's a networking event that I'm going to in July. If you guys want to meet me there, here's the link. Come meet me over there." Different things like that, right? So you build up this massive email list, and you start building this network. You stay in touch with the people that you interview. Okay. Keep in touch with them. And when their stuff comes out, share the audiograms or the trailers or anything else that you made to promote that episode. Share that with them. They'll share it with the people that follow them. Tell them, hey, I would really appreciate if you send this out to your mailing list, or I would really appreciate if you send this out to your social media. I send every guest that I've had on my show an email right after the interview happens that says, hey, what do you think I could have done better as a podcast host? Do you know anybody that might be a good fit for my show? And would you mind leaving me a review? And here's the links to leave me a review. Okay. And oh, by the way, when your episode's getting ready to come out, I'm going to email you the night before it comes out, and I'm going to send you every single thing that I'm going to personally share on social media, so you can have that same exact material, including the full video, the full audio. You can take whatever you want out of it, repurpose it however you please, because it is yours. You can use it as you please. And people love that. And they love the fact that I give them the entire file, because they can take bits and pieces out of that, right? And they can use that, for their own promos, for something. They could even, take just the audio of just them talking like it was something they recorded for themselves, So that would be my recommendations to someone just getting started is, that first, you're trying to get started in a 5-minute conversation. That's what I would tell you to do. Get all the free stuff you can. Make sure you get your podcast artwork done. Start reaching out to people that you want to interview. Record your first 5 episodes, before you even launch, and start hyping it up for at least a month before you launch, and get people motivated and talking about your show that is coming out.
Bro, flames, bro. You just laid it all out. That was an incredible answer, and I'm not surprised. I feel like we covered anything. Is there anything else that you feel like I didn't ask that the audience would need to hear besides what you just said?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to tell you that, for me, when I started my podcast, I felt like, who am I to sit here and bring on somebody that is an expert in a specific field when I'm not, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to tell you right now, you don't need to be the expert in everything. You bring on the guests that are experts in their field, right? And this is one of the selfish things you get to do about running your own podcast. As a podcaster, it is the most selfish thing I do, is I get to bring somebody on my show. I get to pick their brain. I get to ask them the questions that I want answers to. And I've just learned so much just from doing these amazing interviews, with the people that I've made these fantastic connections with. And I stay in touch with every single person that I bring on the show. We network, we connect on social media, and now, episode 100 is coming out this Sunday. That's 100 people that I sit here that my network grew just from bringing on my show. Now, again, I have like up to episode 125 recorded. So of course I'm already keeping in touch with the people that I just interviewed recently, but the connections that you get, that you build through having these interviews and having these discussions, even right now with you bringing me on Vet Boss and having this conversation with us, you and I have been talking for a while. We've been connected for a while, right? I love what you're doing. I love, the mission that you have with helping veterans, especially with myself getting ready to be one when I retire here in 37 days. So it's, it's these relationships that you build, right? It's not just about networking. The key word there is relationship. You want to build these relationships. Okay. So there's that. The other thing is, like, when you're using your podcast to grow your business, right? So for me, I had a financial coaching business. I'm also a licensed real estate agent in Hawaii. I've gotten leads for both of those from people that listened to my podcast and said, hey, I heard your episode where you interviewed so-and-so. That's awesome. I also heard you mention that, you're a realtor out there. I'm PCSing to Hawaii, or, hey, I'm moving to Hawaii and I need some help. I want to buy a place out there. Bro, I got you. Let's go. Right. So there's these little things, these little side benefits that come from just putting yourself out there. And that's the way that I look at my podcast. Is it was an opportunity for me to put myself out there. Yeah, it can be a little frightening, right? It could be a little scary, especially, when you go out there and you start doing like live things like this. I don't go live too much. Right. But when I do, it still gets a little nerve wracking. But now I've even been given the opportunity to speak at events. Right. I got to be a guest speaker at a big real estate investing conference, which was an amazing experience for me. Right. I would have never gotten that if I didn't start my podcast and start interviewing the people that I interviewed, because that's where that opportunity came from one of my guests. So
Wow.
that's the biggest thing, man. If you're going to start a podcast, you have to have a good reason why, and you have to stick with it. Because I'm telling you, if I would have looked at just my first 6 months and said, man, this really isn't working. I'm spending all this time for what? For 20 people to listen to my show. This is crap, right? But no, I pushed through. I started outsourcing. I started taking some of that time back and doing other things with it that time that was more valuable to me. And it started to blossom from there. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much it right there, man.
Damn, Mike, I really appreciate you. I have a strong feeling that I'm going to have you back here. That was very helpful. So it's exciting to see you grow and seeing you prosper. And I got to ask, um, you know, any advice on juggling a lot of things while you're active duty?
Don't do it. No, okay. So for me, it's the big thing is just making sure you have the support to do it. If you find yourself in a spot where you're biting off more than you can chew and it's not working, you have to take a look at what is the thing that's holding you back the most and that's not bringing value to you, and you got to start trimming the fat, man. And for me, like that's what I had to start doing with my podcast. I had to start outsourcing things because I just did not have the time to commit to that anymore. And I was like, hey, I want to go to these different networking events in my area, these different real estate meetups, but I got to finish this episode before I release it on Sunday. So I can't make it tonight and things like that. And I'm like, I was really hurting myself with that because the value I got out of going to the meetups was more than what the podcast was giving me at the time. So that's when I said, okay, I got to step this back. I almost completely got rid of the podcast, to tell you the truth, because I just couldn't figure out how to make it work. But then once I figured out how to outsource things and trust and give up the reins a little bit, that's when I was able to say, okay, I can keep this and I can keep this moving. So you can juggle multiple things, but don't be afraid to ask for help if you need help in certain areas. That was probably my biggest thing. And that's one of the things a lot of us have in the military, right? You have this A mentality where, you think, I can just do it all myself. I could do it all myself. I could do it all myself. I'm telling you, you do it all yourself, for too long, you're going to be by yourself with no one around you. So ask for help when you need help, cut the fat where you need to cut the fat, and just enjoy life.
Yeah. That's great advice. I was in a room full of successful entrepreneurs, and somebody said, "Raise your hand if you ever thought about quitting." And I was shocked as I was raising my hand, right? Because I don't see myself as a person who would do that. And then everyone raised their hand. He was like, "If you didn't raise your hand, you're lying."
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the cool
Absolutely.
thing that you mentioned is I was going to say is right when you get to the point of like feeling like where quitting type of thoughts start coming to your mind, that's usually when the breakthrough comes in and you just level up because you got smarter. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Keep it real. Absolutely. Well, Mike, like I said, thank you so much for this. You gave so much pure advice. I mean, you can go on YouTube and just from the little bit of research I saw on podcasting, there's stuff on like how to, the equipment you should get and stuff like that. But I feel like you really went deep and broke it down. So I really love your answer. And I just want to thank you again. And if there's anything I could do, oh, by the way, I would trust this guy with editing my podcast if I had a podcast. So you mentioned that you help other podcasters edit their podcast. Can you?
Yes.
Okay. Can you share
Yeah.
that?
So I have a podcast editing side business as well.
Mhm.
It's called Edit Pods. So editpods.com. That's my team.
Yeah.
I try to separate myself from it as much as possible, because a lot of people are like, oh, if this is who you're using, because I actually had somebody come up to me and say, oh, that's the team you're using. I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, I thought you ran it. I was going to use it because I thought you ran it. I was like, no, I do run it, but I still try to separate myself as much as possible from it, because my focus is more on my real estate investing, being a real estate agent, and also the financial coaching. So I actually have a team that runs that for me. Again, outsourcing, right?
Awesome.
So I have a team that kind of runs that for me, which has been great. And the other thing that I've been doing is I've actually been helping out other podcasters as well and making them affiliates for Edit Pods. So like whenever they get somebody else signed up, they'll get a cut of whatever, somebody else, whatever subscription they go in at, because we do ours as a subscription-based service to make it cheaper than everybody else's out there. Because if you look at what some of the podcast editing companies out there are charging, it is ridiculous. I mean, you're talking about thousands of dollars a month for a couple episodes, where we're charging $275 for 4 episodes, 4 videos, 4 audiograms, 4 social media caption videos, 4 sets of show notes, all of that for the $275. So that's the most popular package, but there are other packages that are cheaper, more expensive. But that's the most popular one. So just, depends on what you're looking for. But we can help you out. Definitely. But my main website, if you want to see like all the stuff that I'm doing, is just MikeCavaggioni.com. So
Perfect.
It's just my name.
Is that the best place to follow you, look for you, and look at stuff?
Yeah. It's going to have links to all my social media. It's going to have the link to Average Joe Finances, to the podcast editing, to my real estate agent site. It has everything.
Cool. And as far as the real estate world, any types of people you would like to connect with you?
Yeah. Hey, if you're a real estate investor, definitely connect with me, because I love growing that network. And you never know. I mean, I've had deals and partnerships that have blossomed from people that I've met through my podcast or through investor meetups or just through social media. So yeah, I'm definitely down to connect with anybody that's a real estate investor. So definitely look me up on Facebook, Mike Cavaggioni, LinkedIn, Mike Cavaggioni. That's pretty much my thing everywhere. Instagram, Mike Cavaggioni, TikTok, Mike Cavaggioni. just look me up for sure.
Well, thanks again. Like I said, just from listening to you, I got very inspired. You gave me a whole bunch of ideas. So,
all right, when are we starting the Vet Boss podcast? Let's go.
Yeah, man, we're going to talk about that. Yeah, let's go. I'm serious. We're going to talk about that right after here. Cool, man. All right, well, y'all saw it. Y'all heard it. Here it is. We got Mike here, and I'm glad he came out. Glad you guys listened to us today. I hope you guys have the great rest of your night. Peace out.